Everyone. Thanks for coming today. You're joining us, myself, Jared, and Alex. We are part of the Office of Residence and Student Life at New College. And today we are hosting a info session on some of our offerings for leadership opportunities. Specifically, we'll be focusing on the orientation coordinator role, and the commuter advisor role, previously known as the senior peer leader. But we will also be providing an overview of all the different roles today. So it may be helpful as you start to think about how you might want to get involved with us next year, and we would be so grateful to have you with us. So moving along, as mentioned, this will be recorded and you can access that on our webpage that has all of the hiring information. We will be sharing that towards the end of the presentation, but perhaps one of my colleagues here could pop that link into the chat for you. So hello, my name is Trish, last name Starling. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Assistant Dean Student Life and Leadership here at New College at the Office of Residence and Student Life. And I'm going to let my colleagues introduce themselves.
Hi everybody, great to see you. Nice to see some names that I haven't seen before. Welcome, great to have you in the space. My name's Jared, I'm the Student Life Programs Coordinator, and I work closely with these two wonderful people, and hopefully get to work with you next year.
Hi everyone, my name is Alex Absravar. My name on the Zoom is Alexandra, but you can refer me to either, I don't mind. I am the Programs and Communications Assistant here at ORSL. Super excited to work with everyone. I use she, her, and they, them pronouns. And yeah, really excited to talk to you about the opportunities here. And again, you are more than welcome to reach out anytime at new.studentlife@utoronto.ca. We regularly check that email. So if you have any questions about the application or about anything we talked about today, feel free to message anytime.
Okay, so over the course of our presentation today, there's a couple things that we are hoping to accomplish. So we're going to give you an insight into each of our roles that we have available. As Trish said, we're going to really focus today on two of our paid roles, and then have another opportunity later on to talk about some of our volunteer positions. So you'll have an understanding of the commitment level in general of all the roles that we have and some of the compensation models. So those are some things that we're going to focus on. We're also going to talk about the relationships between each of those roles and how they fit into our orientation programs, Sprout mentorship program, and our student life and leadership portfolio more broadly. We'll talk a little bit about the recruitment process and give you an insight into different stages of the process, what might be required of you. And finally, we'll identify how you can get further support throughout the application process from the three of us.
So I'm going to discuss a little bit about the demographics at New College. This is a screen grab from our student guide that many incoming students actually can see at any time, and it's updated every year with our latest numbers. As you can see, you are also likely represented in these numbers. We have almost 6,000 New College students. I think we actually might have reached 6,000. I might have to double check that. About 43% of them are international students, with 38% having English as a first language and the 62% having another first language beyond English. We have, in 2018, our graduates was over 1,000, so number I don't think changed too much from there. And New College students come from over 100 countries. So what does that kind of mean when we look at those demographics? We see that we have a large international population, an intercultural community, and we really want to respond to the needs of students given these many factors. So you might hear of our different programs like New Journeys, our mentorship, Sprout, orientation. So it's really an exciting place to be. There's many things going on, and we're really trying to respond to student needs when looking at these demographics. And we have quite a few leadership roles that you can be involved in that respond to different areas in a student's transition to New College, from say the very first moment they get their acceptance offer all the way to the end of their last exam in April. So there's a lot of exciting things to be involved in, and I'll let Jared carry on, or Trish.
Thanks, Alex. And those are some numbers, but I like to think that all of you, and I think all of us like to think that all of you are more than a number. And this is getting involved with some of the work we do, as well as getting involved as a student who maybe is a participant. We hope to make the experience of New College students feel more interpersonal and feeling that sense of connection, so that you are more than a number here at New College and at U of T. So some of the ways we try and do that is thinking about all of our work as being student-centered. So really thinking about engaging students and supporting them in all of the facets of themselves, making sure that we stay equity grounded. So committing to what it really means to making sure everyone is getting what they need. And also recognizing the differences between us, as well as the power structures that might be embedded within this space, but also the greater space within the city, within our country, within the world. And of course, dedicated to personal growth. So really thinking about meeting every student where they are at, ensuring that we're always striving to be accountable with each other, and the importance of creating a community of care, so that there is a space where everyone can feel supported and nurtured while they're here. So how do we do that? We try to collaborate. So really thinking about the different people who have interest in New College and our students. That might be folks at the library here, that might be folks at the Writing Center, academic success, and also thinking about larger campus partners. So how can we all work together to achieve the best result and best experience for our students? Innovation, so let's see what we can do maybe a little bit differently to do things better. Let's be open, and I think that comes with a bit of humility. So really allowing for open lines of communication, and with that coming connected to the accountability piece, really welcoming honest feedback in order to make sure that we are doing the best we can for each other. And I think connected to that is just really the commitment to care overall. So how do we extend care to all members of this community and attempt to reduce harm for the best experience for everyone?
Okay, so as far as, so those are kind of overarching goals for the Office of Residence and Student Life. For this team specifically, so Trish, Alec, and myself, these are three things that we're really invested in as far as all of our opportunities and the kinds of things that we want students to learn. And so if you take on any of the roles that we're going to talk about today and through our session in the winter term, you'll be directly contributing to these three educational goals. So keeping in mind that we're really wanting to invest in positive and meaningful relationships with our communities. And in particular, we're interested in making sure that we're supporting our commuter students, so those students who don't live in residence on campus. We also want to make sure we're preparing students for success. So looking to support students in being able to sustain themselves in ways that respond to where they're at and where they want to go and what specific needs that they have. And finally, we really want to support growth and wellness. So achieving a balance of all sorts of dimensions of wellness, right? So things including physical, social, emotional, and mental, among lots of others.
Which brings us to probably the main reason you are all here today, or watching after the fact, is really to think about, okay, so what are these opportunities and what do those look like and how might they connect with your own goals? So we have something called the first year experience, and it is created in combination with more traditional orientation, international orientation, which is New Journeys, our mentorship program, which is called Sprout Mentorship. And those pieces carry right from May all the way through to the following April in one format or another. So thinking about today, this gives us a sense of what those timelines look like. So you can see each role has a different commitment level. And we are making a small change, or maybe a big change, a medium change from the format of the program this past year. So if you're familiar with its current iteration, it is different in the sense that we are keeping our Sprout mentorship program and opportunities as one, two different opportunities there, and orientation as a separate space. So there, regardless of kind of how much time you may be able to commit, there are different types of roles that require more or less time commitment during, for example, you could be a e-mentor, and that's a small commitment throughout the summer. Or maybe you just want to be a peer leader, which is a really exciting component of orientation, doing the leadership there. But the timing is really condensed of a really intense 7 days or so before the school year starts. So really this is about breaking those components into smaller opportunities, and you can pick and choose what might work for you. I kind of like to think of it as like a choose your own adventure, choose your own commitment level, depending on what works for you and your life. I am seeing a question right there in the chat, which yes, absolutely. The question is, can you hold more than one position? So yes, you can, on the application, it's a general application. You can select all the positions that you would like to be considered for. So we will talk.
Potential caveat of there are certain, with our paid roles, especially considering the volume of work that's required, there are possibilities to sort of overlap paid with volunteer roles, or even hold multiple paid positions, but those would be really kind of considered case by case, and that would be something that Alex, Trish, and myself would kind of talk to you about and try to figure out a plan that's going to work for you, make sure you can still be successful in the other areas of your life. But in general terms, for a lot of our volunteer opportunities, yes, you can hold multiple positions.
Yeah, and we are going to consider those things when we're looking at the full opportunity list and what you might be interested in, because we have no interest in setting you up for less than success when it comes to being able to commit to these roles. I think that is all I will say. There's a lot on this chart. I think it's one thing, it's better kind of to read through it yourself rather than me going through it line by line, and it will also become more clear as we go through some of the other slides. So I will throw it over to Jared for the next one.
Great. So this is a chart that sort of shows all of the roles that we're going to be hiring, as well as the general timelines of how each of those roles kind of comes together and where the most demanding components of those roles happens to be. As Trish mentioned, we recognize that there are, for lots of reasons, different times of year that might work better for you. So that might allow you to take on a different role. For example, if you're working full-time during the summer, if you're anticipating an internship, maybe our orientation coordinator executive roles won't work very well for you, but the peer leader role could work really well if you have the last week of August available, and then you can hop right into orientation as an example. So beginning from the left here, the orientation coordinator role, the hiring goes through January, the role begins in February and runs through to November. And you can see the sort of increase in workload as the summer goes on, with full-time from May to August. It's an hourly role. We'll talk a little bit more about that. The executive role is hired a month later, begins a month later, but kind of follows a similar trend, ends a few months earlier. E-mentors, and this is a change for this upcoming year, will be hired alongside peer leaders and head peer leaders, and their role will begin in May, but it actually ends at the end of September. So really just helping to serve that e-mentorship component during the summertime, and then the role is over. So if you have a really demanding upcoming fourth year, or if you're involved in other things, say you're taking on an executive role with a club, maybe an e-mentor role might be good for you because you have the summer to dedicate to something. Peer leaders, really will just be hired for orientation this year. So you would kind of join us for training in August, and then you would kind of have a couple of days of long days kind of facilitating orientation, and then that's the end of your role. Head peer leaders, sorry, this is, oh, right. Okay, this is right. Head peer leaders hired around the same time, begin in May. The purpose of the head peer leader role during the summer will be really to just sort of keep up to date of everything that's happening with orientation, and we'll talk more about that in our info session in the winter term, and then ending their role with orientation. Commuter advisor. This is the senior peer leader, so the title of the role is changing, but the components of the role will be very familiar. Are hired alongside our orientation coordinators, but don't begin their role until August. And then their role goes throughout the academic year, so from September through to April. And our Sprout mentors, who will work closely with our commuter advisors, are along the same trajectory as far as when their role begins and when it ends. And great question, Stephanie, in the chat, as far as do these roles conflict with dawn positions? So really kind of depends on which role you're looking to take on. The e-mentor role may not conflict with your dawning position because it would end before really the core components of your dawn role would pick up. But some of our paid roles might create some conflict. So if you have specific questions, we'd be happy to kind of take them independently, and perhaps we could set up a meeting to talk through what some of those pieces could look like for you. No problem. So hopefully that gives you a good idea of kind of where each of our roles comes in time-wise, and where some of those more demanding periods of time will be. So just wanted to show you, this is a photo from orientation 2019. Great. So you can see that there's lots and lots of leaders and students. This is really just to demonstrate the scale of some of the things that we do and all of the rules that make it happen. So there's a sea of people on the bottom of the photo in green shirts, and those are the leader positions that we're hiring to support all those folks in yellow shirts in the upper part of the photo.
So this is our friend Jade, who is unaware that this photo is being used, but I love it. It's from Silent Disco, and I just love Jade and their dance moves. So yes, thinking about the roles themselves, just to break down again, Jared, just thank you. We do have the orientation coordinator, we have the commuter advisor. Those are both paid roles hourly. Then we have the orientation executive, which is a series of roles with different portfolios, head peer leader, Sprout mentor, and Sprout e-mentor. So lots of ways to get involved. Today, we are focusing on the orientation coordinator role and the commuter advisor role, but I do ask you to, if you're interested in the other roles in more depth, please join us for our upcoming info session that will be January 12th, 12 to 1. Of course, that will also be recorded too. So if you need that information after the fact, it will live on in our website, as well. So jumping into the commuter advisor role, there are 3 positions. This is really about being a facilitator, supporting the community, modeling through your own leadership, what this caring community might look like. And ultimately it's executing ideas that come through your team of commuter advisors, as well as ideas that we are working on together as an office to best support commuting students. So really we're looking for people who are keen on creating a commuter community as best as they can. We're thinking about program development. So do you have great ideas, how you might want to bring students together, or what might be missing that you could bring in to create some community connections and joy? Ultimately, joy is great. Thinking about safety and making sure that you are promoting that within the community. This includes promoting general well-being, but also your own well-being, and being aware of a lot of the resources or referrals that you might be able to guide other students to, so that there's an awareness of all the different supports that New College offers and the University of Toronto as a whole. There's a bit of budget management involved, and really you are an ambassador to our office here as the Office of Residence and Student Life, promoting some of our programs, really encouraging folks to come out to events, to meet others, and to develop that community. So it really is a community builder role with a bit of advising and just ensuring that folks know about all the resources and opportunities that are here, because we do know it's a big campus and we want to make sure we're reaching as many students as possible so that they feel supported while they are here. So this role, the application closes after break, so it is January 7th. I do think that is before you come back for classes, so just make a note of that in your calendar. And this role goes from the end of summer, kind of the last week or so of August. There is full-time training, and this carries through on a part-time basis through the school year to the end for fall and winter terms until April. What does that look like in terms of compensation and your time commitment? Again, there's dawn training. Oh, it's 2 weeks. I thought it was only 1 week. I lied. It's 2 weeks of full time. You get meals provided for that, as well as the option for accommodation. There's also additional in-service training as needed that directly connects to the commuter advisor role. And in terms of what you are committing to in terms of your weekly commitment level, it's about 8 to 12 hours per week. You can count on those hours. I will say that there is a bit of flexibility there depending on your personal needs. Maybe you want to, have a few more hours than that a week. We can definitely talk about that. Or maybe you're only able to commit, 5 or 6. We can also have a conversation about that, but I will say that it would be best that you are available for at least 8 to 12 to make sure that we are able to do the programming and events that we'd like to. It is a $15 an hour hourly pay. It does include CCR, which is the co-curricular record validation. There is, of course, the training that you can use. There is Safe Talk certification that would be covered. And of course, just thinking about your own personal growth and opportunity of development as you do the role is another benefit of this position.
Okay, now we're going to talk about the orientation coordinator position. This is a position I hold near and dear to my heart for many reasons. So there are 2 orientation coordinators hired every year. And what essentially they are doing is a lot of stakeholder management and leading connections. There's something known as OPFG, which is the Orientation Planning Functional Group that you host as an orientation coordinator. So a lot of things to do when an orientation coordinator, and a lot of it is involved with stakeholder management and working with a lot of teams, both internal and external. You are fostering community within an entire orientation team. In our info session for the winter break, we will be talking about the executive roles more closely and also the other HPL or peer leader roles. But there are a lot of players involved, including multiple orientation team portfolios. So like marketing and promotions, program planning, volunteer management. So you are involved in a lot of those things as a coordinator. You participate in the hiring process. So essentially once an orientation coordinator is hired, they immediately look into hiring their own exec team. So that is like one of the first things a coordinator is kind of looking into. They do prioritize student learning. So a lot of these things that Trish already mentioned with the commuter advisor role, we're seeing again with orientation coordinators. They prioritize safety and well-being. They provide leadership to the team. They also have quite a large budget to manage. So over $100,000 can be typically some numbers you could be working with. You also model positive behavior and provide leadership to the execs, HPLs, PLs. There's a lot of student and team development. So throughout the course of the summer, a lot of trainings happening to support you and your team, a lot of different ways to kind of get involved and learn more to facilitate orientation week. And also part of the orientation process is a very solid transition report. So what is a transition report? Essentially, this is at the end of your term. So around October, November, you're working on a report that essentially encompasses every single thing you did throughout the entire summer and when you were hired. And it really helps out the team for the following year to kind of read what went on, what worked, what didn't work, any advice you could give. So that is part of the process of an orientation coordinator. So our application, similarly to the coordinator, the advisor position, closes on January 7th. The duration of this position is February to November. So February is when the coordinator gets hired, and by November, it's when you wrap up the transition report, and then we start the cycle again. So next slide, please. So with the compensation and time commitment can vary, but we're looking throughout the start of the role. It's mostly like hiring and trainings a bit. That's February and March. April obviously is exam seasons. That's quite a lighter period. There is a lot of biweekly central orientation training. So those can be about 2 hours depending on the training. There's JOLT and Identify, Assist, Refer. So that's the IAR training. So those are asynchronous. Those could take several hours, 10 hours, plus 3 hours synchronous during the summer. And then it's a lot of synchronous work during August. So, and then finally, we're looking at NCOLT, which is the new college orientation leader training that is run by the Office of Residence and Student Life. So we've done it for 3 half days in the past, which is around the last week of August. So quite a few trainings. Again, these are spread out throughout the summer, so it's not all at once. Some again are asynchronous, some are synchronous, but again, they are spread out. For February to April, we could be looking at 3 to 8 hours per week. Again, we recognize that orientation coordinators are students, so obviously your academics will take priority during this time, but there will be tasks to complete, such as hiring. And then once we move into the summer, it really can bump up. So we can look at 35 hours per week. I believe that the orientation coordinator role maxes out at 40 hours per week. So you can essentially imagine it almost like a full-time 9 to 5, if that's one way you could think of it. And then September to November, September obviously is when orientation happens. So that first week of, say, September can be pretty intense. You can be expected to be there for the full day up until the night. And then once we get into the end of September to November, it's a lot lighter. It's mostly just finishing up the transition report. So what does the compensation look like? Similarly to the advisor, we're looking at $15 per hour. There is also a stipend added. So once everything in what's called the orientation project charter, so that is a governing document that outlines everything that is going into orientation, all the procedures, processes, policies. The orientation coordinator will be very familiar with this document, and once you have done everything outlined in it, you will also receive a stipend. There is a CCR validation, pre-service and in-service training, and also a Safe Talk certification involved. So that is the gist of the orientation coordinator position.
Thanks, Alex. So just thinking back about a review of what that timeline is. So right now, as we speak, the applications are open, and the first position again closes at January 7th at 9 a.m. So you have until January 7th at 9 a.m. to get those into us. We kept this open throughout the break, thinking that you may have a bit more time than you do right now as term closes. But feel free to take a look at that in advance so you can get a sense of what that looks like. Again, Friday, January 7th at 9 a.m. is when the orientation coordinator and the commuter advisor applications close. We'll be hosting interviews between the dates of January 17th and 20th. And then we have our next closure Wednesday, February 2nd at 9 a.m. and that's for the orientation exec applications. We will host those interviews on February 11th, 14th, 15th, and 16th. And then the final closing is Wednesday, March 2nd at 9 a.m. as well. And that's for the head peer leader. mentor and e-mentor applications. I realized that I have not included that one there. So it is for the final 4 positions. And that stage of the process requires a video interview. And so between the dates of March 16th and 23rd, you'll have the opportunity to submit those video interviews. So in terms of next steps, definitely check out the Student Life hiring page. It does have a rundown of a lot of the things that we have chatted about today. You can access that via this link here, or you can use the QR code. You can also access the common application from that website. Definitely, if you don't already, please follow us on social. So that includes our Life at New and the NC Orientation Instagram pages, as well as Facebook. We also have a TikTok. So that's where really all the information that comes out of our office is easiest to find. And that includes weekly programming that is hosted currently by our senior peer leaders who are creating lots of great opportunities for you to come out and connect. So if you haven't done that already, please do that. If you're interested in some of these roles, it might be a great idea to participate so you really get a sense of what that looks like. And if you have any questions, of course, so happy to answer those as we wrap up here today, but as we go through the next few weeks, feel free to send an email to new.studentlife@utoronto.ca, and we are very happy to help you along your journey if you are considering these roles. I do think this brings us to our question period, and I want to introduce a few special guests who are here with us today who have the best experience of all. We have our senior peer leaders who next year, if they were to do their role, would be known as Commuter Advisors here with us today. So we have Chelsea, Eric, and Sanjana here with us. And they also may have great perspective if you have some questions. I will also say that Eric has held the position of orientation coordinator this last year. And I think Alex has done it all. So lots of like real on the ground experience here. So please, if you do have any questions, more than happy to answer them at this point. Was there any questions that came through the chat that we didn't get a chance to answer?
Nope, but feel free to pop your questions into the chat if you have them, or feel free to turn on your microphone. We'd be happy to hear them as well. Thanks, Justin. I have a question for each of the SPLs. Maybe start with Chelsea, then Sanjana, then Eric. What has been your favorite part of the SPL role? Sorry, I stole your question, Yvonne.
Well, that's a loaded question. My favorite part, I guess the flexibility. I really like how, I don't think chill is the right word, but it is very flexible. It's really great working with Jared and Trish because they're very accommodating to your needs. They really want what is best for you and they want you to be successful. So suppose there's a time when you just can't do this many hours 1 week, they'll be like, sure, you deserve a break. Things like that. There's also a lot of opportunity to be creative with the role because you do plan and facilitate your own programs, passive programs, and they will support you with that however much you need. I guess that's my favorite part. I also like the free food, but
can't go wrong. Thanks, Chelsea.
I'll go next. I think Chelsea kind of named the nail on the head. I think that's the word. There's definitely so much flexibility. You get to be creative, but also you get just so much out of it. Like in itself, it's very rewarding to build a community and give students opportunities to like do something fun, meet other people. know what new college is all about, but also you learn a lot for yourself, like in terms of professional development. There's so many opportunities to practice like public speaking and communication, organization, and Trish and Jared are so welcoming to see what you want to practice and give you the chance to do that. And yeah, so I definitely took more out of the job than I really expected when I first took it on.
Thanks,
Yeah, I think,
Jana.
yeah,
Go ahead, Eric, sorry.
I think the main part for me is that you get to basically organize an event every single week. And this is from conception to like executing it to like just planning every aspect of it, and marketing included. We often get Alex or Jade's help with that, but you could also have some ideas of your own, and that's all while to make the program better. So I would say it's a very good opportunity for you to practice your program planning skills, especially, and then also just being able to engage with the students and talking to them one-on-one.
Great, thank you. Oh, and I'm seeing a question here from Yvonne to the SPLs. How do you handle managing both school, other commitments, and the SPL role?
I can start. I have a handy dandy planner. It can be digital if you want, if that's what you prefer, but it really is helpful to have something to just organize all your times and stuff. As for me, I do have a work study position right now. I'm also part of student council at New College, so there is a lot that I'm a part of. Sorry about that. In terms of managing like all these commitments, it's kind of I plan out when I need to prioritize each of those commitments. For example, during an SPL program that I'm facilitating, I'm not thinking about school. I'm not thinking about NCSC, right? It's all about kind of getting your headspace in the right way, your mind in the right headspace while you're doing it. Because you're also responsible for that. I don't know where I'm going, but yeah, I hope that made sense.
It did. Thank you, Chelsea.
I can also add, yeah, sorry, thank you, that a majority of like your work kind of works on a very set schedule, and thankfully Trish makes these amazing calendar reminders for us to help us stay on that deadline. So you kind of, after a while, you kind of work onto this flow of knowing, oh, okay, it's Tuesday night. I usually try to get this part of the SPL role done. I'll do it now. But of course, if like you have a heavy assignment schedule 1 week, you can totally just contact the rest of the SPLs and SSL team and just let them know.
Eric.
Yeah, I guess as a final thing, it's just all our roles is pretty flexible. We can switch our community hours depending on if you have a test that day or something like that. So, sorry. So it's always fine to just let Trish or Jared know of something in advance. And also, as Sanjana has said, we know of events happening far in advance from Trish's calendar. So there's never issues of just something popping up and you having to be there.
Thanks, Eric. And Eric is likely balancing multiple things right now as a student athlete and an SPL and past OC as well. Thank you. And yes, I do love calendar invites. So thank you. It feels good to know that it is benefiting other people other than me. Are there any other questions?
I see Alex and Chelsea have their hands raised. I'm not sure
Thank
who's
you.
first.
I wanted to add on to the answer. So because there is three commuter advisors, you have 2 other people to ask for support when you do need it. I just wanted to point that out.
Mhm.
Yeah, and just to add on to what Chelsea's saying in the same line, it's not just the SPLs. There's ORSL here to support. So there's Trish, Jared, and I. Whether it's involving helping with developing programs, getting materials ready, or helping with marketing. You have us. You also have work studies. So we do hire approximately 3 work studies every year, and they're also a support available when needed. So it is a lot bigger and more interwoven with all the roles we have. So there is a lot of support available when needed.
Okay. I have one more question, and this question is for Eric and Alex. What was the most rewarding part of being an orientation coordinator?
I could go first if Eric's. I think, so for reference to everyone in the call, I was an orientation coordinator in 2019. So I was technically the last OC to do a completely in-person orientation. And then in 2020, we went completely virtual in response to the pandemic. It was a very intense role. It was one of my first jobs where I had like quite a lot of responsibility. It was also one of the first roles that I really learned like so much in so many different areas. So it wasn't like I was hyper focused on one thing. Like, yes, the focus is developing orientation and getting it running, but there are so many pieces that are involved. So I learned how to budget a really, really high amount of money. I learned how to be a stakeholder and how to interact with multiple people throughout the college and beyond the college, because you have to get comfortable with calling people, you have to get comfortable with emails and communicating. You also have to manage a team because you're working again with a lot of people in a lot of different portfolios. I did a lot of marketing work to sell like our tickets at the time. Sponsorship was a thing we also did in 2019, and just program planning. Like you may think that, planning an event like a tour may seem simple, like you just get a route and that's it, but there's so many pieces that are involved with something that may seem simple, and really the training that I got and all the support from staff and all the thought that kind of went into it really opened my eyes to how much bigger and more complex things actually are, but they can also be simple too. So I think it really opened my eyes to a whole new world. And I think the OC role really developed so many skills, and it was like something that did change my life in a lot of ways. Now I work in student life, so you could see the impact it has. But I think that was one of my favorite parts about being an orientation coordinator, like the breadth of things that you can learn.
Yeah, I think for me, it's just being an orientation coordinator, there's not a lot of opportunities like it, especially at our age. So you're thinking a 4th-year student that can organize an event that hosts maybe 600 or 700 students. Like, that's a big event, and there's a lot of components to that, like Alex said, like the marketing components, the program planning, volunteer management. You always have like the wonderful executives to help you, for example, Chelsea, but it's just you're integrating all of these things and then trying to put them together so that every component sort of is working together to make sure that the whole program is something that people would know, first of all, from marketing, that they would enjoy from the programming, and every leader is well managed from the volunteer management perspective. So I guess it's just covering a lot of aspects, and it's definitely rewarding. You learn a lot of things on the job, but all Trish and Jared is always there. The transition documents are really comprehensive, I think, especially since 2019, 2020, they have been super long, but very comprehensive and will always help you do better and improve upon previous years, hopefully. But yeah.
I'll agree with Eric in saying that I was also an orientation coordinator back in my day, and I have in interviews had interviewers ask me, how did you do that role? You were 20. Yeah, like it really is, it's a really, really unique opportunity. Lots of great skill building in both the orientation coordinator and the CA roles. So really nice ways to continue to grow your skills and are nice sort of stepping stones if you're interested in continuing in student affairs work, for example, so working at in post-secondary education. But as Alex mentions in the chat, it's a really great stepping stone into other areas as well. Just so many transferable skills. Okay, thanks all for your questions.
Yeah, and thanks for being here today. Appreciate you coming out, appreciate the interest you have in the roles. We are very excited for the prospect of having you join our team. So please don't hesitate to reach out if things come up or more questions come up as you go through the process. You know where to find us. And as mentioned, we will be uploading this to our hiring website. So if you want to review afterwards, you will have that for reference. And yes, I feel as though, okay, hold on. I will close out our recording, and then I would love to plug some events that we have coming up next week. Thank you all.